Okay, second part of 12-2, we're looking at meat production. Meat production takes place in pastures and rangelands. Obviously, nowadays you have free-range chickens and rangeland raised beef and grass-fed beef and so on and so forth. Sometimes they're raised in feedlots if you're looking at large quantity of meat being raised at once. And it's not just meat, it can also be any products like milk, eggs, all those things kind of fall underneath this category. Between 1950 and 2010, the increase, there's been a six-fold increase in meat production, which means that there's been increased demand for grain. And the demand is only going to increase because meat production is going to continue to increase as well. Keep this in mind when you are asked a couple questions later, because I'm going to ask you, how does this impact the economics of farming and agriculture and money being spent by consumers? So keep that in mind when we continue on. So this is just showing you a graph of meat production. Obviously 1950 to 2010, you can see that there has been an increase. Don't forget that this also has an impact on air quality and the air quality, water quality, soil quality. All of those things are tied to meat production and farming in general. This is a feedlot. Some of you were asking about a feedlot. This is a picture in your book. This is a feedlot. You can see it's a high concentration of animals in a very small space. If you actually look on the back side of this diagram right here, you can see that there's actually a river or stream that runs on the edge of this feedlot. So think about those type of things when you go to answer these questions. So I want you guys to take time to answer these questions in your small group. And keep in mind what I was talking about with the economic impacts of meat production, and what are the causes? What are the causes of increasing meat production? Why is it the United States? Give you a little bit of hint here. Why is it that China is going to see an increase in meat production over the next couple of decades or even years? And then obviously the first one there is the environmental degradation that can be caused by feedlots or large-scale meat production. So pause the video and answer those questions. Okay, the last part of 12.2 discusses aquaculture. Something we need to understand about aquaculture, and the reason that we have aquaculture is because most of our fishing used to be wild caught fish. And I know that you go to the stores and you'll see wild caught salmon, wild caught trout, and you have a higher price for that. Nowadays, there is the growing field of aquaculture because our fisheries are wild fisheries. Fishery is a concentration of particular species suitable for commercial harvest. The Great Lakes used to have a bountiful amount of commercial harvesting for perch and other fish on the lake, but those fisheries have dropped off. 30% of our global fisheries have been overfished, which means if they've been overfished, the population has decreased to a point where they are no longer harvestable. And 57% of our other fisheries are at the point where there's limitations. If you've ever seen the Deadliest Catch, they always talk about the quota that they have to meet. Well, 57% of our fisheries, they're saying that they're at full capacity, which means people are pulling out exactly the amount that the groups that control these fisheries are saying that you can harvest. So that means they're maxing out how much they can actually pull out of the ocean, pull out of the lakes, pull out of whatever that water source is. So the aquaculture is actually, this is a newer term that's coming up. Your old textbook, or the old textbook, actually didn't have the blue revolution in there. So we talked about the green revolution and what the green revolution is, increasing our crop production. But now the blue revolution is this aquaculture. So this is the world's fastest growing type of food production. It's a new area. It's a new niche that people are getting into. It's dominated by these operations raise herbivorous species, which means species that do not need to have a meat source for their food. So they're at that primary consumer group if you're looking at our trophic levels. So I have a couple questions that you are going to be asking. I want you guys to think about aquaculture and the impact of aquaculture. So just to kind of show you what's happened over the last couple decades, the wild catch has dropped off again. Reason being, the wild catch, the population of the organisms that they were catching has been dropping, so there hasn't been as much there to catch. And then we look at aquaculture. aquaculture is only on the rise. I told you guys in class that if I was to get into any sort of business venture, aquaculture would be the place, because there is room to grow in the aquaculture world. The downside to aquaculture, when we talk about the economics of things, if you think about like swordfish, for example, swordfish are not, you're not going to be able to raise swordfish or tuna or those kind of fish because they're not herbivorous animals. They need to migrate, they need to be in open spaces. So you can't raise those types of seafood animals in aquaculture. It's just not possible. You don't have a large enough area. So what I want you guys to think about, so how could aquaculture impact pricing of seafood? So the way that things are going right now, what would that potentially, obviously supply demand. So think about that. And then I want you guys to think about what are some potential threats that aquaculture poses or pose to wild ecosystems. So I would like you to start by looking at, just look up some pictures of aquaculture and where they have aquaculture. Take a look at it, kind of look at the impact that aquaculture and the setup for aquaculture could have on these wild ecosystems. So pause the video and answer these questions with your group. So the last thing I want you guys to do between you, your partner, your group, I want you guys to think about or any leftover questions, things that you're not quite understanding or not sure about that you want to ask. Get those ready for a group discussion, and once everyone is back together, we will go over your questions.